Hello.
Hey, let's see if it's working here. You should see my setup to have my phone so I can have my hands free. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Hey, everyone. Oh, look at, hi, Colleen. Yay.
Yeah, it's working. How's the delay? Let's do the technical stuff. Everyone can hear us.
Better.
Yeah,
better.
Seems great. I have the as you can see on display.
Oh, yes.
Should have yours in the background too. so, hello everybody. Oh yeah. Oh, I meant the book you wrote too. So I just want to let everybody know we'll be starting in a couple minutes. So you have time to grab your tea, your lunch, your coffee, whatever you'd like. We'll start in a few minutes here.
Yeah, I'll get a little set up my looks like we are matching, Adrianne.
Like we planned it.
Earrings in there.
I put on what I thought was lip chap, and I think it has a lot of tint in it.
It has tint. It looks. I was actually thinking. I was like, oh, I always put a little bit of makeup on, but usually I don't usually see you with lipstick. I love it. It's beautiful.
Well, it wasn't on purpose there. Now I feel more like I look like myself. Okay, you don't normally look at yourself so much. Okay. Oh, look at all these people joining. Hello.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so that will be, I guess, good enough.
Yeah, looks great.
I do have this here.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to see in the background.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. How about me?
Perfect. You're clear. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm digging the natural lighting in this. I don't have to have a light on me if we're doing it. Nice. So just to let people know, if you want to write some questions in the comments, you can. When we're discussing, we might be able to see it. I might draw or pull it up. So feel free to comment as you like in the bottom there. Well, Shelly, are you ready?
Ready? Whether I'm ready or not, we're gonna do this, I think.
Great. So I'll just start by introductions, and we'll jump right in. So my name's Adrianne Vangool, for those who've just met me for the first time here. And I'm coming to you on Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis people. And I have a clinic in Saskatoon here called Vangool Wellness, and it's a physiotherapy and wellness clinic where we take a whole person approach to care. So I'm a physiotherapist, yoga therapist, and teach some continuing education courses, and an author of this book that we're here to talk about, which is The Journey of Self-Care to We Care. And these are all the terrible tabs, but you can see it more. Yeah, there you go. Terrible big tabs. It's just I can't let go. And so it's The Journey of Self-Care to We Care, the art and science of the human experience. And I'm so happy to have Shelly here with me. Shelly, I'm going to give a nice bio here. Okay. So you're going to, hopefully you enjoy listening. So just take it in. So, okay, I will. So Shelly and I have known each other for many years. And you are a dear friend, mentor, and collaborator. And you've been so generous with your time. And I just love every chance we get to connect, share, and create. It's one of my favorite things to do with you. And it feels like a playground to explore ideas and concepts and share from the heart. So I always appreciate how you do share so fully. So for those that don't know Shelly and her work, she's a physiotherapist and yoga therapist, an educator and pioneer of PhysioYoga. with over 20 years of experience integrating yoga into rehabilitation, with a focus on helping people suffering from chronic or persistent pain, pelvic health conditions, and professional burnout. So she guest lectures at yoga and physiotherapy programs, presents at yoga therapy and medical conferences globally. So when you follow her on Instagram, if you haven't already, you should, and follow her website. She posts a lot of what she's doing. You just, every time I see you post something, it's just, yeah, it's cool to see all the different diverse places you speak and collaborate, and the people you collaborate with. She maintains a clinical practice in Sylvan Lake, Canada, and believes that cultivating meaningful connections, compassion, and joy can be powerful contributors to recovery and well-being. So Shelly is co-editor of the book, Yoga and Science in Pain Care, Treating the Person in Pain. I really highly recommend this book if you're somebody with pain or working in the world of working with people with pain. Just a really, really great resource. So, as I acknowledged in the book, if you haven't read the book already, you haven't purchased the Journey of Self-Care to We Care, you can get it on Amazon. And if you're in Saskatoon, you can get it at the clinic or at McNally and Turning the Tide. But on Amazon, you can see the foreword, which we're going to be really leaning on and going in more detail into that Shelly offered, or authored, I should say. And I could go on and on and on, but I thought, let's just get into it. So Shelly created and just, yeah, I've talked on and on and on about it, but I've never written a book like this before, but I think it's unique to receive such positive feedback on the foreword written about one's book. And I had somebody come up to me who knows me pretty well, and she wasn't familiar with you, and she was like, Shelly Prosko, how well do you know her? I was like, oh, we're pretty close, blah, blah. And she's like, I have never read a foreword like that before. And I think the way you wrote it, it just really, to me, you just captured what the essence of the book I hoped it would land for people, and you drew out things and highlighted things that were important to me, that I was land, and so many layers to it, and I really appreciated your perspective too on things that you added into forward. So thank you for being here, and thank you for writing it.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for asking me to write it. It's a true honor. I know we use that word, so lightly sometimes. Oh, it's an honor, but it really is an honor. I respect you so much, and I love you. I love you, and I love your work. And it was a really cool experience. I read your book, so I plucked out things that really stood out for me, and it was a real process in writing it. And as you know, it took me a long time. Wow. Like every time, okay, it's not quite ready. It was like baking something. It's like, no, it's not quite ready. It's like I would take it out of the oven. Nope, not quite ready. And so I just said, it's just not quite ready. And we had a couple conversations, and I don't know, I think it's our relationship. I think it was a combination of me reading the book and, like I said, plucking out certain things that stuck out for me, and then also me knowing you. Like you said, it just felt like it came from the heart, and there are certain parts, and that's just because I think of our relationship, and then from our couple conversations, I really pulled things out from that. And then this is going to sound cheesy, but it was like, when I read it now, and I'm going to read it for everybody, but when I read it now, it's kind of weird. It's like, who wrote that? It's like, what? Like, how did I write that? And I'm not coming from a place of arrogance. It's just weird. And maybe people who write understand that. When you go back and look at a poem you wrote or a book or whatever, you go back and you're like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
So that, I don't know, it is what it is. I don't know what to call it, but it's, when you're in flow, that flow state, and you're doing it, sometimes things just kind of come out. And either that, or I was like on drugs or something, and I don't remember. Anyway.
You did it after a long meditation. Well, I think, before we get into you reading it right away here, I remember asking you to write the foreword before I even knew the book was a thing. So, like, it just kind of blurted out. I had started writing, didn't know if this would be a thing or not, didn't even, was naive to the whole process of authoring a book. And then when I emailed you to formally, you know, I thought formally, okay, now the book is actually a thing. 2 years later, the book's actually a thing. And I asked if you would first provide a quote or something, or edit or something like that. And you were like, I'm happy to do that. Are you okay that I share this?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You're like, I'm happy to do that. But I do remember you wanting me to do the forward. I can do, I don't know if I can do both, but would you like me to do the forward? And I just remember like smiling ear to ear, like, oh my gosh, you remembered. And like, yes, please.
It's
and
like,
so I just.
it's like being uninvited from a party. You're invited. Hey, yeah, and then all of a sudden.
No, I got someone else, my neighbor.
Yeah, like, oh,
okay, well, Shelly, if you would do me the honor of reading your words, and for those listening, we're going to be pausing and discussing as she's going through the forward. So it's kind of going to be our anchor through the conversation.
Okay.
So take it away.
Good, and hello, everybody. Lots of people are joining, and I recognize some of you. So hello, I'm sure you and I, Adrianne, want to shout out and say hi to everyone personally, but
yeah,
I'm not going to be doing that here. But anyway, hi, everybody. Okay. And I see some family on too, so that's nice. Hi, family. Okay. All right, so here we go. I'm going to read the foreword that I humbly authored for Adrianne. And Adrianne, you stop me. Just interrupt. Don't be afraid. And here we go. Okay. I first met Adrianne at a professional continuing education course I taught on the topic of yoga therapy and chronic pain. I recall her attentive and kind presence. The types of questions she asked and comments she offered were evidence of a deeper understanding, wisdom, and genuine curiosity to grow and to learn more. For one reason or another, we immediately felt a kindred spirit. Perhaps it was because we were both diligent athletes in competitive sport in our formative years, or that we were raised in Saskatchewan, University of Saskatchewan physiotherapy graduates, and yoga therapists, eagerly and tirelessly, very tirelessly, pioneering the integration of yoga into rehabilitation. Or maybe it was that we share a general sense of awe and curiosity and are free-spirited movement aficionados, reflective truth seekers, and dreamers that enjoy people, life, laughter, and joy. We do share that. Or perhaps our fascination with humanity, namely human psychology, behavior, and relationships, is what fuels our fun and meaningful connection to this day. It could simply be that we share a similar sense of humor. Regardless, anyone who knows Adrianne knows she is one of those people that is delightful to be around. She sincerely listens, hears, and sees you with curiosity, kindness, and without judgment. So you feel free to be yourself. Adrianne embodies what it means to create a safe space and be a compassionate guide and witness. These are vital qualities for healing, and you will undoubtedly experience this as you make your way through this book.
Let's pause there, okay. Shelly, because thank you, by the way. And I wanted to pause there because I think what you described in terms of how we know each other, I think maybe that's one of the pieces that was unique to the foreword is, you know, highlighting the relationship. But I think what I wanted to pause on is just that feeling of safety, and when we can feel safe in being wholly ourselves with another, the joy that comes. Oh. And also where that freedom of creativity and expression. And I feel that with you, and I know in our podcast, like conversations went places, you know, it's a playground, like I mentioned before. And I'm wondering if some of the people listening, because sometimes it might be a foreign concept. So we might have a lot of privilege, you and I, in having that experience. And I'm wondering if those who are listening can think of a time or a person, even or a place where they felt that safety with another, or maybe it can be an imagined, or maybe it's something we can start to cultivate, is how do I begin to feel that safety and joy and creativity? Because I'm curious your perspective on this too, but I think that is such an important part of the rehab and healing process, is almost like rediscovering joy, remembering joy, and doing the work to feel safe, I guess, first. Or yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I have goosebumps when you say that, because in any endeavor that I do, but talking about writing the forward here, maybe one of the reasons why it's, how do I say this, so good.
It is good. You can say it. I'm going to say it.
No,
it's really good.
But maybe the reasons why it's just exactly what it needs to be, it's because I do indeed feel so safe around you, to use that word, and like I can be myself. You wouldn't judge me. It was just pleasant. So then you just let it flow, and and like you said, that creativity then does come out, and looking at healing. Or whatever word we want to use there. So everybody listening, if you're thinking of, if you actually are healing or rehabbing from something, or maybe just your own life, going through some tough things and looking, how can you be more resilient and so forth, this idea of safety is really important. So yeah, good call.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think it's a common theme throughout it, and that's what was so cool, how you touch on it a few times in the forward too. So
Yeah.
okay, continue.
Adrian and I have since engaged in many heartfelt conversations on wide-ranging topics, often circling around our shared passion for integrating yoga into physiotherapy to help provide more whole-person, compassionate care. As physiotherapists, we are trained to assess and treat the physical body as if the body were a machine to be fixed in isolation from the rest of our existence and surrounding environment. Thankfully, the value of the social spiritual model in rehabilitation is now strongly supported by science and can no longer be ignored. However, guidance and pragmatic frameworks on how to take a biopsychosocial spiritual approach are lacking. Unfortunately, this book contributes to filling this gap and provides a tangible and accessible path forward.
Thank you. Let's pause.
Okay.
And for some people listening, the biopsychosocial spiritual, like just that word, might be new, and the concept might be new. So I'm wondering if we can kind of tease that out a bit, or break it down a little bit, to give some people some context into what we mean by biopsychosocial spiritual. So the bio meaning our body, and jump in whenever you want, Shelly, to add on this. So bio meaning our body, or the physical aspect of oneself. The psycho meaning mental aspects, thought processes. Would you put emotions here as well?
I think so. Yeah. I look at the bio as like you said, the body, but even like physical. So body and all its processes. So any, like the immune system, the hormonal system, like anything sort of tangible. And then psyche, I would say, yeah, anything that we see is not as tangible. So emotions, thoughts, the mind. That's how I look at it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the spiritual part, that's one that, it's sometimes is more difficult for some people to sit with, or have it's less, let's say, less familiar in the Western medical model of things. So I love your definition of spiritual. What's your definition of spiritual in this context?
Oh, I don't know. What's my definition?
Well, no. I've heard you say it before. I'll say what you said. How about that?
I have a concept.
You said,
I have a concept of it.
Okay.
But
I'll say what I've heard you say. The meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
And and I'll give my interpretation of it as well. For me, it's, and I know we'll get into this a little bit later as well, but for me, it's this sitting in the moments the present moment, or in stillness, or being in relationship, or connecting to self, nature, just things that draw me into the moment that I'm in, that create that sense of awe and wonder. That to me is spiritual.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
not religion, right? Like that's where this is not, it's non-dogmatic in the context that we're talking about.
Yeah. It's interesting how the healthcare world, and that's in our profession and physio and all professions, when we talk about biopsychosocial spiritual, and we're like, why spiritual? Like, let's leave that out. And it's so interesting because what biopsychosocial spiritual, like it means whole person in relationship to their environment. That's all that means, the whole human being.
Mm-hmm.
Physical, all their systems, the mind, the emotions, and then the social aspect, which we'll talk about in a moment, and then the spiritual. Like, why would you just leave that part out? And I think it's because we just have, like, we conflate religion and spirituality. But even religion, if you're working with someone, or those of you listening, you yourself, if you have a strong faith or religion, that is part of you, and that's integrated into your care, into your life. So we, as the therapists, we're not putting our value system, belief system, spiritual or religious beliefs, or yeah, just like I said, any of our own values, like we're not putting that onto anyone. So that's, I think, yeah, it's an interesting conversation. But yeah, spirituality to me, actually what you said is similar. Connection is a word. So connection is this to yourself, nature, like you said, and something higher, if that is in your belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the words you use, awe and wonder, that give you that sense of awe and wonder. And the meaning and the purpose in our book, the last chapter is social and existential concerns in pain care. And Marlisa Sullivan talks about these ideas of meaning and purpose, and that kind of goes a little bit deeper than biopsychosocial, right? When we're getting into something deeper, and that's why I say, well, that to me, that's a spiritual aspect. So, and I just want to mention too, this came to mind when, you and I were talking about, the bio, and that's all the physiology and then the psyche, but you can't really separate all that. Like, emotions are physiology, the mind and thoughts, like, that is physiology. It manifests in our physiology. And we'll talk a bit more about that too, like how you can't really separate. We separate it just so we can explain it better to ourselves and to people, but the mind is the body is the mind, so.
And they communicate, and yet, like you said, what happens in the mind happens in the body, and I think, and the spiritual. And I think I love what you said in terms of, as practitioners, we're not putting ours on another, but we're setting, it's just like we're when you're taking that whole person approach, you can't ignore parts of the self that are also in pain when the body's in pain or the emotions are in pain. And so it affects someone's, it affects the whole person. And so I think creating the space for somebody to bring that forth, that is what our responsibility, or I feel our responsibility, or our opportunity as practitioners, is to help people remind what to bring forth. Because sometimes, anyway, without getting into a tangent, but sometimes those other parts of us become dormant when this thing is so loud, this pain is so loud, or this whatever part of us is speaking the loudest is taking over. Sometimes it's helpful in rehab to remind someone, well, what helps you feel soothed, what makes you feel connected, and using that person's connection to spirit, not ours. So I thought that was really good.
Yeah, and what brings you joy, what gets you up in the morning, and like you said, we lose so much of that, especially when we have persisting pain, or something's gone on for a long time, or we're in grief and loss, feeling those kinds of things. And so remembering those things, and then the last point before we go on, I think my theory why maybe many of healthcare professionals are afraid of that spiritual part. I think maybe because they've never been taught, or we've never been taught the tools. We don't know how. So we're just like, no, it's just easier to, no, I'm going to forget about that. That seems not within scope. And so I think if more of us understand, no, this is what it means. And this is how you can, help create the space to help the person connect more with their beliefs, values, and spirituality, which helps healing. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, we could go on. It really helps them become more whole. Like you said, healing. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
That's your book. People, when you read this, you just do such a great job. Okay. It is particularly, I love this part. Okay, this next part. Everybody, if you can just stay for this, if you have to go, just stay for this. Okay. It is particularly refreshing to see a well-respected physiotherapist such as Adrianne gathering up the courage to extensively include the social part of the biopsychosocial spiritual model, addressing the we in we care. She opens her heart and shares a part of her personal story and explores uncomfortable truths in our society and systems to underscore the profound impact of societal and systems health on individual health. Conversely, and equally important, she also demonstrates the necessary role individual health plays in societal health and our capacity to sustainably serve. In other words, healthy biopsychosocial spiritual organizations, systems, and societies foster healthy biopsychosocial spiritual individuals and vice versa. In the myth of normal, trauma, illness, and healing in a toxic culture, Dr. Gabor Mate clearly outlines how all aspects of our culture, including social, political, and economic conditions, influence our individual health. Molecular scientist and biomedical researcher, Professor Michael Kobor, emphasizes the veracity of his coined phrase, from society to cell. I would even propose that stating one influences another is an incomplete concept, as this suggests that each are connected and communicating, but they're separate. So I further propose there's no separation. We are sentient beings, inseparable from one another and our environment. One of my favorite phrases I use in my personal and professional practice, in my continuing education courses, and in a book chapter I authored in here, the Compassion and Pain Care chapter. So the statement is, to serve self is to serve others, and to serve others is to serve self.
I love that. I love it.
Okay. Keep going.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to pause later.
Yep. Yeah. Public health is individual health. Individual health is public health. We care is self-care. Self-care is we care. This concept is effortlessly embodied throughout the book and brilliantly translated into practical tools for us to explore.
Pause there.
Okay.
Because I just want to highlight this. These are the last two paragraphs. You explain it so much more concisely than I do in the book. So people, if you just buy this for the forward, it'd be great. It'd be worth the money. But but I think what language you used is when you tied it explicitly together. Public health is individual health. Individual health is public health. Because I think we hold these concepts, especially when something is so big as a system as healthcare, it's really easy to think it's really easy to other. And like, it's not my responsibility. It's not me. It doesn't affect me. But public, like, so when you tie in, because I think we can feel that sense in terms of a family system. If I take care of myself, the ones that are immediately in my family unit, you know, we can feel that and see that. But I think if we can extend that beyond our family unit and realize that this larger family also feels that too. And our impact can be that large, but also it's done in the small. And so what you tied in there, just, I love when you use those words. But I wanted to also pause here because I'm wondering, Shelly, we talked a little bit about the spiritual aspect, and I'm wondering if you can read from page 10, this poem, because it ties in kind of this, for me, where it came from was tying in that feeling of self-care and its connection to we care. And I feel like this taps into some of the feeling of that. Would you mind reading that on page 10?
Tend and befriend.
Yes.
The need to feel.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw a curveball at you here.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you want to read it.
Yes.
Because everyone's listening to me read the introduction or the foreword that I wrote, and maybe they'd like the author of the poem.
Yeah.
To read the poem.
I'd love
to.
Okay. Here we go. No, it's great.
Okay.
So this is on page 10 of The Journey of Self-Care to We Care. And it starts like this. Why do I yearn for belonging? Am I lonely longing for another or for myself? Where do I go and why? Is being home, being in this body that unbearable that I need to flee? Getting lost in purpose and losing myself? Running from and getting glimpses of the person I was and am underneath? When I'm still, there's a quiet sadness. Is it mine or another's? How do I know whose heart I feel? Is it generations from the past whose suffering I carry? Or years of performing and being who others need me to be? I crave sitting in ceremony with wise women, the ceremony of soul talk, womb processing, and being truly seen by another whose pain is like mine. We carry the wisdom and pain of losses and loves of generations long past. Yet we live day to day on the surface, avoiding the depth and truth of what it is to be human and a woman. Do you see me? I'm trying to see you. Will you let me in? Can we share this weight and lighten the load for generations to come? Can we process this together? Or am I meant to sit in the solitude of trying to know and unknown? Are you there? Am I? Is there a way to ease this suffering? Or will it only be bandages on my heart? And so that's the feeling I get.
That's the one. That's the one I told. Just for everybody, when I read that one, I told Adrianne, like that just, I mean, it just hit me every cell. Thank you for writing that. How did you come up with that? Was it something, it flowed, or that's a pretty personal question?
No,
like, is there?
I'm happy to talk about it. Yeah. So for me, the poetry was my own. I didn't write it for the book. I was writing poetry. It was an unconscious. It was starting to happen when I would sit with myself. And so for me, it was a process of connection, healing, a spiritual process for me. And oftentimes I would write things that I didn't know I was feeling. And then later I'd read back and, it almost felt like foreshadowing sometimes. So it was more of an unconscious kind of process, but so important in that connection and self-care for me is to be in a creative space and having time to do that, because for me, when I'm creating, that I'm in relationship with myself. When I feel more disconnected, when I feel overwhelmed, it's usually a sign that I've been disconnected and becoming more distant from myself. And so that's where that poem kind of came out of, was just that yearning, feeling lonely, I guess, I didn't know I was. And also the hurt that comes and seeing what's happening in the suffering around in life. And that same suffering exists inside too. So it was that kind of, every time I read it, I feel something different and I connect something different. But the poetry in the book came from that heart place in me. So
I can feel it. Can feel it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. So as you turn the pages in this book, you will experience how Adrianne eloquently conveys knowledge from various fields of science and combines it with her personal and clinical experiences, mind, body, breath practices, including yoga principles and practices, poetry, and one of my favorites, the self-reflection practices. She then encompasses it all in a 5-step process she created to help us remember who we are, to connect to what we value, including ourselves, and to lovingly and courageously move towards healing and living with more peace and ease. And this book isn't meant for us just to read. Adrianne wrote this book for us to experience. At its core, the journey of self-care to we care is an experience of love. On this journey, there is a theme of compassionate, loving care that is woven throughout. It starts with an invitation to explore the process of loving yourself, which includes presence, awareness, deep listening, patience, trust, compassion, discernment, insight, courage, kind discipline, and action. This book is timely. Okay, this part's going to get hard to read through, but I'll do it. This book is timely. During one of my conversations with Adrianne, she explained that since the pandemic, she started noticing a growing number of people around her, personally and professionally, were struggling more than usual. People are feeling hopeless, helpless, disconnected, and not feeling heard or seen. We are more divided than ever, and for neurobiological reasons explained in this book, we are less able to hear or see one another, to understand and to love. This affects our physiology and our health. We are doing our best, reaching for much needed temporary fixes to soothe ourselves in the moment, but we do not seem to have access to the awareness, guidance, resources, or tools required to embark on the journey towards the root of our suffering. This book will be a starting point to guide you to heal, thrive, and live well and whole within community. The loving process of cultivating connection with oneself, others, and to our surrounding environment is a non-negotiable part of healthcare. Whether you are a person who is feeling overwhelmed, lost, confused, in pain, or curious about starting your healing process, or someone in a leadership position that can influence change, or an individual looking for resilience and sustainability in your advocacy work, or a healthcare professional overwhelmed in your own personal and professional life. The journey of self-care to we care will help you get started on the road to becoming reacquainted with yourself and moving towards healing, hope, and loving connection.
Thank you. I got emotional there too. What was it for you that made you get emotional reading it?
I think that part, as I knew it was coming, there has been a lot. I mean, life is ups and downs, and you know, we have happy, joyful moments and loss and sadness, but yeah, over the pandemic, just in my own life, and then also those around me, what you said there, what you were seeing, the hopelessness, the helplessness, for me, it was the more divided than ever. That hit me. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I don't know, it's just, I've been like that since I was a little girl. Like, why? It's like that. Why can't we all just get along? And not to be roses and unicorns. I don't mean that. Let's argue. Let's have disagreements. Let's say, you know what? No, that person is, you know, not for me in my life. You can break up with your friends. And you can't be friends with everyone. I'm not even saying that. But there's this lack of, it's so dark and ugly. It's like almost I don't enjoy this word, but like a hate and a disrespect. And I love the the definition of love by this Chilean, I think it's a or Chilean I don't know, a biologist who Humberto Maturana, and he says the definition of love. So this biologist's definition of love is the act of allowing another to be a legitimate other. And to me, that's when I read that and got emotional. That's hits me because it's just lost in many aspects, especially since the pandemic, it seems. And then, yeah, so what got me, it just hurts. And here's the individual health and public health piece. It hurts me when I see, you know, in my immediate sort of circle, people, you know, not, and again, I don't mean just arguing, like I mean literally,
Yeah.
this
It's intense.
yeah. And not loving anymore. And so that hurts me and I feel it, you know, and then I'm hurt to see it just happening also. Maybe that doesn't involve me, but it does involve you, like we're talking about the public health and individual health. So yeah, I think it's just, oh, I don't know why. It's just sad.
Yeah. I mean, your words, the paragraph before that too, where you said that it's a book about, well, I have to go back to it, but the love piece, because that is what stuck with me. And there's a poem in there in the book called Love into Wholeness. But I agree. Obviously that's why I wrote about it, but I think what struck me is that we've forgotten, or I think we're getting better now, but we have forgotten how to disagree and stay in love.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And conflict occurs, but like what you said, there was something more final about it that was happening. A rigidness to our disagreements, a coldness, a lack of humanity. It's the way in which I speak about in the chapter about dehumanization in healthcare. The way we dehumanize certain people to justify treating them a certain way. We started to do that with anybody who disagreed with us. And so I hope with the book, it's not about changing your worldview. It's just about developing strategies to help us not change our beliefs, but stay in love, stay in regulation as we inevitably disagree with somebody. But where can we find the space where we both can be? And I think it's like in those diagrams of circles, there's the overlapping. Where can we find the space where we both can be and not trying to change another necessarily? I hope that in that sharing of space, we inevitably will find more peace, but not by not talking. And just like you said, I know it's not, it's not, a hard line of this or that. Like, it's not like we're friends and not friends. Like, it's nuanced. And I'm not saying not everybody is safe to have in your space. So I'm not saying that, but I think generally we stopped being able to be in communication with people. Without rambling any further, I want to touch on something on page 87. I'm actually going to read another poem for those that are interested in listening to this later, because coming back to what you said in one part of that is the tools that are discussed. So I lean a lot on the evidence and the yoga system that have hard and fast tools that have been developed. There's lots of different tools, and I'm not saying these are the only tools, but try on what fits, let go of what doesn't. But one of the tools I speak a lot about is meditation and mindfulness. And I often hear, you probably hear this too, Shelly, like, we're told, we know we should do it, and the feedback I often get is, I don't know how to do it, or I'm doing it wrong. And I think it's expanding our idea of what meditation might look and be like, and Um, for me, it is often sitting with myself without stimulation and not necessarily sitting in a yoga pose. And for me, it's being in nature. And so this poem on page 87 is called Water's Edge. Take me to the water so I can hear you speak. I want to hear your hopes and dreams. Move to tears by your wisdom. Tell me your story and I'll share mine. The rhythmic sound of waves soft against the sand, almost in tune with the beating of my heart. I come to the water's edge to be with you, to be with me. Merging in quiet moments when I hold space for you to speak. Surface joy and presence in my day is nothing like the depth of your waters. I come to the water's edge to hear your story and better know mine. I long for you throughout the day, looking forward to quiet moments of dawn and dusk. You used to come to me only in my dreams. Now you come to me in the stillness. An old friend returned, the me I longed for during life's greatest challenges. When I thought I lost you, a quiet voice in me whispered, she's waiting for you at the water's edge. So I think as we wrap up here, if the only thing you take away from this book is that it's a process of coming back into loving and remembering our own essence and connecting then to the essence of another is my intention with the book. And I'm so grateful, Shelly, that I felt seen and heard. I think that's what when you wrote the foreword. So I think that's why it felt so good. One piece we haven't really talked about yet is the compassion piece, which is foundational to this process of sitting with ourselves. Now, that's a whole other topic. You've done lots of on this. And I'm kind of putting you in the spot, so see what reflections come up here. But what are your reflections or thoughts on compassion and its relationship to self-care and we care? Or what role does compassion play in that piece of self-care?
Well, I think that it's the foundation. So I think compassion, it is the foundation of care.
Mm.
So as we talked about self-care, we care. I mean, that's in your title, you've separated it for ease of explanation and so forth. But just like we talked about during this it's the same thing, same. It's just care with a capital C. It includes we and the individual and the community. And so I think compassion is the foundation of all of that care, and to remind ourselves that self-compassion is included in that. So if you are not including your own compassion towards yourself, then it's not compassion.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, to your question of like, where does sort of compassion fit in maybe to the self-care piece? It's almost like you have to take a step back and just look at all those words and terms and kind of and narrow them down again, like, okay, mm-hmm. Compassion doesn't include the self. So of course it's inherently self-care. Like I said, it's the foundation. And self-care is part of the big umbrella of care. Like we care, self-care is all in care. So, and then the idea of now, what is compassion? So that would be another Instagram live.
Yeah, that's all. I know it's the whole other.
Yeah, right. For me, because like you said, I have thought a lot about this, and of course done the intellectual kind of reading on the science around compassion and self-compassion, and wrote that book chapter in our book about it and so forth. But I think just to kind of concisely bring it together, compassion is, it can mean really a lot of different things. It's not like there's one agreed upon definition, but in the literature and what a lot of the compassion researchers agree on, it's this idea of first recognizing that there's a struggle, whether within yourself or around you and someone else. So you're recognizing there's struggle, suffering, whatever word you want to use there. And then you have to have the motivation to want to help alleviate. And there's an action then. So it's a little different than just having a feeling. So often people may think compassion, oh, I have compassion for that or this or you, or but language can be powerful, and compassion, there's an action to it. So it's not just an emotion. Okay, it's this feeling to first, like I said, you have to recognize that sometimes it's actually hard. It may sound common sense to those that are listening. You're like, well, of course I know if I'm, struggling right now, but sometimes we don't. We're oblivious to it because we have to, maybe in the moment, we have to push it down. We have to just, nope, can't think about that right now, can't. And then if you're not present and mindful and aware, we may actually go past even recognizing that we're struggling. And maybe in the moment, temporary, no big deal. But if that's your strategy as life continues on and on, then that can, that obviously might lead to things that aren't very healthy, maybe unhealthy strategies to cope, maybe even manifest physiologically. So in the body. Yeah.
And I like what you said about it being foundational, and that I hope people will, after this, explore your chapter, explore your work on it, because it's also complex and can be practiced, but it's really what you said, the action to it. And that's also what self-care and what the concepts talked about in We Care. Action is required. It's not a passive process.
Right. And that action, so that self-compassion, so action, the action piece. So there's all these ingredients to self-compassion, right? So the awareness and, being mindful and discerning what you need in the moment and so forth. So that's, like I said, another Instagram live. But that end part of action, that can be not doing anything, like we're stepping away from the situation. It can be setting a boundary. The action could be having solitude. You just need space and solitude. The action could be reaching out and asking for help, which might take courage sometimes, right? Or the action might be, okay, I really need to express myself and voice this concern. That might take courage. Getting vulnerable is important too. So I think we'll stop there because we might cut off, right?
I know. Yeah. No, it's good. No, we gotta, I'll wrap up here, but I just want to, again, thank you, Shelly, for doing this, for being a part of this project, for even with this last question that I threw at you, for just always bringing a perspective. I always learn when we're in conversation. And
I do.
Learn, and so I also love that about you. I respect you so much. And to all of you listening, please check out Shelly's Instagram, social media stuff, and please check out this book. And it's on Amazon if you're not living in Saskatoon. And the way that it reaches people, I want to mention, is by writing a review, by sharing it. It's a great, I've heard from a few people that have purchased it. It's a great gift. A loved one, a family member, a friend who's needing some help, or somebody who's experiencing burnout. Like Shelly mentioned, it was written in a way for everybody. It's not just an academic book, but it also touches on those evidence-based things. So I really hope it reaches many people, and I'd love to hear your feedback on it. I really do love hearing what people have to say on it. And again, thank you, Shelly, for writing the foreword and for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me to write the foreword and for doing this. And truly, everybody, it's an easy read. You can see it fits in your hand nicely, and it's an easy read. And you just did it. The love, the poetry, and the practicality and the science, it's bizarre to me how you got that all in there. It's just, yeah. So everybody, there's lots of practical tools. The self-reflection pieces are my favorite. I'm going to keep reading it over and over. It's something, it's an experience. Like we said, this is an experience. So Thank you for writing it. Thank you for putting yourself out there, Adrianne.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Love you.
I love you, Adrianne.
I
Goodbye,
love you
everybody.
too. I want to hug you in
all.
person
Okay.
soon.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Okay, bye, Adrianne. We'll
Bye.
chat soon.
Yeah. Bye.